Namaste, all the friends in the audience. Thank you, office bearers, for that generous introduction and for arranging this wonderful seminar. September is the month where everyone is looking at this big deadline and this very onerous task that is placed before the chartered accountants. And so this seminar takes special importance, and I also hear that there's one in Vasai. So, parallelly, there are more than one seminar happening on this subject in both the cities. So thank you, Saurabh Bhai, Ketan Bhai, Hitesh Ji, and Mr. Gupta, and all of you for being here on this Saturday morning. It was great to hear the anthem to start with, which probably most of you know was given by Sri Aurobindo to our institute. And it's something that we can remember on a daily basis before we perform any kind of a task. And today, chartered accountants have this two exclusive tasks left for them. And that is to do attestation of tax audit, to do attestation of a statutory audit of companies. So these two domains still remain exclusively with the chartered accountants, and therefore it is a great responsibility upon all of us to meet the expectation of those stakeholders who have given us this task. And I want to start on my way. I remembered this one quote from an interview I had done some time back as an editor of the BCA journal of Mr. Malegam. And he's a very senior chartered accountant, a former president of the ICI. And he told at that time, and in fact, Mr. Manoharan had written and quoted this in one of his articles a couple of years back. He said, the important thing is that for a profession, what you need is not the brilliance of the few, but the competence of the many. And I think that's what our anthem was telling us, to remain awake at all times. So friends, with those words, let's start with this approach and planning. When Mr. Sayya called me, I said, I don't want to talk about technical things. We have been doing tax audit for so many decades. I think in 85, this first time came in, the clauses have increased. We have seen paper filing. Now we are seeing the utility, and all those things will be spoken by many other experts. But I can share some of the things that I have learned, and I would be happy to share it with this audience. So I'm not able to go back. Mishra ji. F5. But it goes to some different page. I want to start from here and then go down. नहीं, ये कोई और पेज पे. ठीक है. Let it be. I'll start and then I'll go to that. ठीक. So friends, a wife asked the husband, tell me who is stupid, you or me? And the husband was very calm. And he said, everyone knows that you are so intelligent. You will never marry a stupid person. And this is becoming the challenge before the chartered accountants. On one side, we have the regulator, we have the stakeholder, and on the other side, we have the client. And our reporting needs to be probably a very decent reply to some of the questions that come across, where we have to balance our views in a manner that is true and that is fair, and in this case also correct. So the game here is that audit is the last exclusive function. Things are becoming more and more intricate. If you didn't know how this some Java utility works and some setting works on your machine and all of that, it's becoming harder. There's so much more information asked, so much more digital information is asked. This information gets connected with other information that the regulator, the government is getting. There are also huge amount of changes. We come across changes very frequently. So the speed and impact of those changes can be dramatic. You have the clause 44 discussion after this one. We have UDIN, we have audit trail of filing from where it is filed. You have so many digital footprints that you will leave behind now that everything is digital. Your tax audit report is also syncing with the ITR. So if you report something here and you report something there, instantly you will get some kind of a query from the tax office. And a lot of us know that, guns are pointed towards the chartered accountant, if one can be slightly brutally honest, that chartered accountants have been under the spotlight as the keepers of so many things. So we can't take our work lightly. Of course, knowledge is becoming very important, constant updation and complacency in terms of updating ourselves and improving our process means sure death. CAG in the past have pointed out so many things on tax audit reports. I'm not going to go into it for the sake of time. And some IT observations were also there, that manufacturing of chartered accountants through classroom model, and I'm not talking about the education method, but the ability for us to apply what we know, which should include the habit of thinking, the habit of introspection, application of mind. The ITAT said is replaced by spoon feeding, which kind of teaching encourages independent thinking. So all these things we have to keep in mind before we get into performing these two functions, which are exclusively left for the chartered accountants. In this session, our goal is to improve quality, to be able to do something where we can scale up. If we can do so much, can we do that much more? Because see, the client has 1 whole year to do whatever they need to do. Then they have 3, 4, 5 months after the year is over. But the CAs, how much time do you have? 15 days sometimes. If you are lucky and you have good clients, you have 1 month time. And then all of this comes at once and say, can you please do it? Am I right or wrong? So we have very little time. Our profession is such that we have very short window. We have lot of pressure. We have often got information that does not come in the manner it should come to us. And then we are still challenged to perform and submit on time, submit with that quality that is required of us. So this is sort of the background. So how we can scale up, improve client service. Now, this is a fact. We can't change it. Can we change the client? The answer is no. Can we change some of these things? No. We have to face it. We have faced it. We can see how best we can deal with it. So it's question of managing it well, where our health is not affected, where our blood pressure doesn't go up, where we don't fall sick. We see some chartered accountants just departing. So we want to keep that pressure also low. We want to reduce errors, because a lot of our work can be prone to error when you come last minute and when the data is a lot of data. Can we improve documentation? We heard from Saurabh that documentation has always been a challenge. Recently, I was looking at some firm and all their audits had just one electronic folder and everything was dumped there. There was no referencing, there was no connecting, anything. For an audit, all the electronic files were just dumped there and there was no paper file. So this is a challenge. and it's only for each one of us to introspect. Sometimes it's possible to do it subsequently as well if one cannot do it at that moment of time. And lastly, to enable our actions to protect, uphold what the profession is about, because this is what I read from that interview. This is only going to keep our profession and its flag flying high. So, since 1314, we have e-filing. Now everything is utility driven. Earlier, we could put those who are from the earlier times, you could put some papers, you can give explanations, you could do so many things. Now, whatever the utility gives, you have no option but to give in that space, in that format that they have prescribed. And there is nothing, no further explanation that you can provide. Right from the beginning, I think in 85, when the tax audit report came, it's a quasi assessment. They had said that we want to help the assessing officer to perform his task of carrying out the assessment through this tax audit report. So that should always be remembered, that this data that goes to the assessing officer is almost a quasi assessment, that you are performing some level of assessment work that they may be able to do. What we will cover, I'm going to cover only 7 things. First is use of TAR pack. Second is risk-based approach, which Ketan bhai mentioned. The use of workflow. Talk about filing in this format that I have learned over the years, which I call structure, format, and checklist. Use of notes to TAR. I don't know how many of, does anyone use notes to TAR? Yes, okay, so only 2. Anyone else? Acha, so you use notes to TAR. So very few, 3 out of this large audience, whether how we can use some of this. Appointment and engagement letters and LORs, that also was spoken earlier, and of course, evidencing and documentation. So this will be our clear coverage. Let's look at the TAR pack. So I don't know whether you can see the screen. What I have learned over the years is to make a pack every single year. Pack is like a box. When you order something online, you get into a box, right? If you ordered 5 different things, it'll all come in a box. It'll be, placed inside a box in a certain way. Now, what's a TAR pack? One can call that we put all the reading material in one place, and that will include, say, a new exposure draft that is already there. Now, it's probably throwing some light on some of the learnings from the last year. Probably it has a bit on clause 44 that happened last year, and now the exposure draft is probably changing that part. But it looks like a whole new guidance note. You also have the implementation guide to tax audit that was brought out. So any kind of material that your staff, that your office would find relevant and handy, that you put it in this reading material folder. So that brings the most current, the most relevant PDF files, and you can always upload it to Google Drive, you can upload it to Box, or whatever cloud format that you are using. I felt that this was very useful. Whenever staff is elsewhere outside, then they can go to that cloud folder and download some of this, get their own answers. So these are, guidance note of 22. You have some other where the quick reference guide that just came out, and a few things are important. Oftentimes I mark some of those because those are the main important parts, and then you keep it on this folder. The second one is you have your own material, and this is a very important part. We'll go right into this, is to have 2 things. One is a list of questions, which we call checklist, and now this has been brought out into the guidance note. There are other publications which gives a set of questions that one can use, your staff can use, and you put that as a checklist. And the second part is the use of formats. Now, oftentimes the clients ask, how do I provide this data? You may have got notice, provide full details of XYZ, right? But he doesn't give a format. Oftentimes the notice, at least earlier. Nowadays, maybe it's a little bit better. But a format really clarifies what you want from the client. And therefore, the client cannot escape that this is exactly what is desired to start an audit and to complete an audit. So the formats are a very useful piece. If we provide that to our, how many of you use formats? Okay, very few. Achha. So formats, we can go through this also. Then, of course, you have non-corporate clients for which lovely books are there from the ICI, which talk about the format of the financials, etc. You also have engagement letter formats, which you put in this pack. This engagement letter is also something that's very useful. So you don't have to make it every single time. And what we do is often make one which is a combined engagement letter if you are doing a tax return filing and if you are also doing, say, Form 3 CEB. So over the years, what I have learned is, can we bring all of this into a short engagement letter? Oftentimes, a lot of these documents become too large and then the client doesn't read it. Sometimes the staff and the CAs don't read it. They just take the signature because you need some engagement letter on the file, which is not the right thing to do. So you can have this very short engagement letters. One of the other things that I've learned is if we keep the engagement and appointment constant, that this engagement letter will remain valid till it is superseded or till it is rescinded or till it is withdrawn, then you can just exchange a fee letter. So that if the fees, there is any change, you can just, exchange a fee letter that for this year or for 2 years, whatever way you desire, that this is the fee. And that I felt was that every year, too many paperwork, you can, avoid and instead carry on the engagement letter, and that is permitted. You also have notes to TAR, which we will go into. But let's start first with the risk element of it. So over the years, since I qualified in 97, I realized that when things become too large, can you give the same amount of attention and same amount of detail to everything that is there? And what should you as an engagement partner look at? What can be delegated probably to, seniors, chartered accountants, and what can further be delegated to, assistants? And if we did some kind of a risk assessment of all these clauses, and when you include 41 clauses, I think get multiplied into 70 plus clauses. So that's a lot of clauses if you look at, say, 2 weeks to 3 weeks to 4 weeks time. We are already on 2nd September. We are almost on 4th September. So we don't have a lot of time. Can we say that we apply a risk-based approach to this? So one way to look at the risk element was, can we call certain things as low risk that does not require any kind of working, that does not require any kind of impact on the gross total income, that doesn't have much correlation with the ITR, and therefore these are low risk. Can anybody say what can be a low risk item from the TAR? Huh? Books of accounts, for example, you have basic address. Now, I don't know why we need the address. Honestly, when I look at my PAN and Aadhaar and all these things today, to my mind, address is not even required. So you have a lot of these first 8, 9 clauses, which are probably low risk, which has PAN number. If you put wrong PAN number, the whole thing will not get validated. So there is very little risk that something will stop you at some place from uh, going in the wrong direction. So I would call those which are static data, like you have in your software. You filled it once, now you are not looking at it, right? In your ITR software, you are probably not looking at that static data, which has name, address, some PT registration, some 10 GST registrations, etc. And therefore, that static data can be, put in this category. Then you have a medium risk element, and this medium risk can be, of course, you can call it importance also, that whether this is risk or whether this is important. And for example, let's look at what are the low risk items. You can see it on the screen. Say permanent account number, the status, previous year ended, assessment year. This somebody from your office, if they've filled it out, you may not need to check this at all. Plus, if you send the TAR in PDF to your client and he has approved it, that further reduces your responsibility, because the client has confirmed that the TAR is correct from their perspective. You also have things like, whether names of the partner and that profit sharing ratio, some of those things. That is, now I don't want to give this because I'm not a regulator, I'm not ICI, I'm not WRC. You decide based on your type of clients, and you may have, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of clients. Say that these are the most important clauses in my universe of clients. And these just do not, like in Caro, you have this Chit Nidhi. Now, I have in my life, in 25 years, I have signed maybe 300 different companies, but I have never come across any Chit Nidhi fund. I don't know how many have, auditing that Chit Nidhi fund, right? So some of the clauses are completely there for God knows what reason. At least most people, to them, it does not apply. So you make sure that if you have all these clauses right till the end, you say what is the high importance and what is low importance. And now let's look at, say, some high importance things. For example, these are the things which will affect your ITR. If you write something or it has some kind of a working in it. For example, you have depreciation. If you work the depreciation in a certain way and you put something somewhere else which is different, and both of those will not match, and that will, and oftentimes what happens, clients is filing his own ITR or they have a separate tax consultant and you are the tax auditor, and therefore there can be a mismatch. So you want to do this process. I feel that this has helped me a lot. When so many tax audits come right at the end, I know that these are the 20 things which are most important, and that I must see clause by clause by clause. So I feel that level of importance will be great. The second one is applicability. Now, like I said, in any kind of a format where questions are asked, which will apply to Caro as well, is that certain things just don't apply. Like I mentioned about this Chit Nidhi, or whether some new public issue. Now, public issue doesn't happen in most private companies, or even if you are doing listed entities, that doesn't happen so frequently. These are infrequent events for which the questions are there. So you can go through the applicability. So you have reduced the very large universe. And what is the universe here? It's about 117 clauses from just this 136 lines. This may not be exactly accurate, but there are 117 clauses for which 72 are marked as high or very important, 24 are marked as medium, and 21, which is about 18%, as of less important. So you can further reduce by applicability also. And then, of course, as a chartered accountant, the documentation part, the quality control part requires you to have who has done what and who has checked it. So these two columns will make sure that you have a trail of who has done it and who has reviewed. And this one other column, whether anything is required in the letter of representation. I suppose that all of you will come to it. A letter of representation is very important. If you are not using notes to tar also, at least use letter of representation, that certain representations are made by the client. So at certain places, for example, something is missing in a given clause. Can you put an LOR point and say this requires some kind of a LOR point? So you have written here that you don't forget right at the end. And you can have a decision on what is the minimum documentation that is necessary. Some working paper, a reference. Now today we can do electronic copy and we can do paper copy. Even after having a paper copy, a lot of times, because the file becomes too big at the end of it, we scan everything and put it in electronic, because real estate in Mumbai is anyways terribly expensive. You don't want to keep so many files. Can you put a lot of the scanned material in the folders and then, archive it? So that could be a working paper reference. And then, of course, you have a checklist, which will come to how we can refer it to that checklist, especially for the important clauses. It's great to use checklists. Tell me, anyone wants to share why should one use checklist? We don't forget important points. Anyone else? Sorry? Okay. Anyone else? Sorry? We will save time. We will save time. Why would we save time, sir? We'll focus on important points. Okay. Anyone else from the back there? Yes, madam. Training. Yes. Could you hear it? Help control the audit. Okay. So for something about training, right? You said, and it will help control the audit. It will also make things uniform across all your audits, right? If you have one approach, for example, if you are a bank and you have a format, you say you go and do a KYC. Now, KYC is a standard 4-page form, right? So it is a set of questions whether your income is less than 50,000, from 50 to 1 lakh, So this kind of a thing, a checklist always helps to have a standardized format. So all these points make it very important that at some stage, if you develop some checklist, if not for all clauses, at least for some clauses, that will really be helpful for all the reasons that you all have brought out. It may seem like a little bit of pain because then one has to go through it. But I suggest one book that I had read several years back. It's called Checklist Manifesto. And it's written by Dr. I don't remember his name, but you can look up somebody if they have internet access. How airplanes started with checklist. And flights are very precision oriented things, and they have huge amount of risk. If anything goes wrong in a flight, imagine if you are in a flight and there's something stops working and the flight starts rocking, you will freak out and you will probably not board another plane, I'm telling you. So they started with this, it was some doctor, a medical doctor, but it's a very small book. I suggest if you feel apprehensive about use of checklist, do buy that book called Checklist Manifesto. And I have written this because I've been writing checklist book for 7 editions. The last one was in 2017, so I have a little bias about it. But it helps in a very big way, especially if you do at one shot before you start the work. you have formulated your thought pattern that this is how, these are the questions which are required, say for clause 44 or for whatever else, then you have decided that these is exactly how things should be done by asking these questions. So, any questions about this part, or anybody feels this can be improved, or any other comments? No? Shall we move to the next one? Okay, so here is a list of, you can have, I think Institute has one whole set of checklists. I think it's there in this last document that came out in August also. So one doesn't miss something out. So look at this on clause 13. You have all these questions that are there. And once it is filled out, you know that something is not missed out. Now, the risk in the checklist is oftentimes, and Madam there said that it helps in training. Sometimes I have felt that, people come and said, oh, but for that question, I thought it was supposed to be that. So their comprehension of a question is different from what you have intended. So it's a great way to clarify what you are seeking through asking those questions. Of course, then there is the format part. So here is a couple of formats that one can use. I think this is also probably there in the Institute's guidance note, where the formats are prescribed. The utility also gives it. A lot of times people want to give it in Excel. For example, if you have list of assets, addition to assets, and if you have a format, then it's much easier. A lot of software also support straight away putting Excel into the utility. So those kind of things are also very helpful. Let's go back to the workflow part, which is something that anybody uses cloud-based workflow. Acha. So anybody has read DCMM 2.0 that ICI has brought out? Acha. So let me throw a little bit of light on this, that once you have this checklist and once you have this formats there, how do you get your staff and your clients to be on the same page? And that is called a workflow. So we all agree that this is to be given, and this is done or not done. How many people have to follow up a lot with the client? Anybody who has clients who don't require any follow-up? No? So this is a real pain. I can't tell you enough about it. Most of the time we are, what can I say? Those loader, unloader, we are pushing the client. We are following up. Bhai, ye de do, wo de do, please pura karo. That is a constant effort. And till you do that, as if client is completely not worried. He is not. You are very concerned that 30th ho jayega, 1% penalty lagega, all this. Client is not worried. Anyone has experienced this? Okay, so more hands. Not worried. Never worried. So he is perhaps one of the most senior most. He is saying never worried. So out of all these years, clients are not worried. Now, what a workflow does is, I want to show you whenever it comes, probably not now, after a few years, 5 years. I wanted to show you you can see it on the screen. Okay. So this is a workflow that is there, and it's a cloud-based solution where everything that we do, we have prepared a template. Now, with this template, one of the template is tax audit 44 AB financial year 22-23. Now, what it does is I can roll it as for a specific client or a specific project. So first is client interface. This is only available, visible to the client. The second is planning, fieldwork, and completion. All audits only have three components: planning, fieldwork, and completion. There is no fourth. As yes, you can say permanent audit file, etc. Now, within this, you can set a timeline. So you have a starting timeline, you have a due timeline, and you can do it and you can add the people whom you want. For example, an audit assistant, an audit executive, and you can say the client. Now, all of them are on the same page. Now, what do we need from the client? So for here, we need Form 3CD. So here you have the formats that we spoke about, and you have the new Form 3CD, which the Bharat Sarkar provides. So you put this right here. If they want to see what is Form 3CD, and here are the formats, they can download, and then they can attach the filled out form onto this. Just like you upload anywhere else on your pen drive or whatever, you can put it on this, and then you say that this matter is closed. From to do, I can say that this is done. And once it is closed, it automatically throws some kind of a email, depending on your setting, whether instantly or once a day or twice a day. It will come as an email, as a digest, that these are the steps that are closed by the client to all who are on that particular task. You can also specifically, talk about a particular thing. For example, I have said Divya, and I want to write something, and it'll pop up like it does on WhatsApp. You write somebody's name, and it'll pop up on the other side. So if you want to have a discussion about a specific point, you can have a short comment section as well. So you have this patch, which will take care of hopefully the follow-up part. Now, let me tell you how it takes care of the follow-up part. Unless they will not be bothered about this follow-up also, then there is, one can, you are helpless. Now, add CA, for example. These are very small things that matter. Sometimes every year it happens that I go to file something and I realize that I add CA nahi kiya hai. Anyone face this? Okay. So these kind of small things, then you call the client, I'm ready to file, this is not done, and oh, I'm doing it, or I'm out. All that really makes it muddy in that sense at the last minute. So these kind of things, if you put, and what it does is it generates a report of what are the tasks allocated, what was the due date, and how much of it is completed. So oftentimes clients have this great ability to tell that, I had given it, I have done it. Actually, they may not have. I have emailed it to you. When you say, where is it? It's not there. All of this is completely taken out because a log is right here. So it gives you an overview where what is the project ka progress through this, what is becoming overdue once you put those dates, and what is upcoming, what is due today, like you can see today. And right now, no dates are set for this 182 task. But once you have done this patch, it becomes very easy in the future. So you can also get a time budget out of this, because all the people who are working on it can probably, log in their time which is spent on this particular project. And it's a fairly straightforward this thing. I have learned it from DCMM 2.0 about workflows, and I really recommend that you read that publication. It is online, DCMM 2.0, and see what are some of the technology support you can draw out of, off the shelf things like this. So this is that part. Then we come to Structure, format, and checklist. So we spoke about the formats. We also spoke about uh, checklists. The structure is like, sorry, you are not able to see. Come, why? All the business class seats are open here. Why sit in the economy class? You can see, please. So this approach, when we still had paper file, I felt that we should have flaps. How many of you make actual files? Raise of hands. Acha, so that's excellent. And you use some kind of a file flaps in it, right? And do you print it or do you write it? You still write it. Anybody prints it? So, acha, so some of you print it. So one of the easiest way to do it to start is to make that structure. What is that structure? These flaps are available in the market. They're fairly cheap, right? Those yellow, blue, whichever color you like. You choose those things. You print, you format in an Excel thing, right? All these, whatever, if you need 10 flaps for, say, all the clauses put together, one is, the first 8 clauses, whatever way you have, that you can put it in Excel and that print it. Say if you do 20 audits, you can put those yellow, thoda patla paper, which will be taken by the printer. Don't buy a very thick ones. Put it in the printer and print all the flaps. Then you have got the structure ready, the file structure, which are these flaps. Now, under those flaps, you want to put the formats. Now, formats are mostly today digital, right? You are not printing what the client is supplying, except a few things. Maybe there are some certificates, maybe there are some, but mostly now everything is digital. So nowadays we make a paper file, or what we do is we make folder clause wise. So whatever, say 30 clauses are applicable, we make folders clause wise, and within that folder, we give it a name with a number. So then that is a kind of an indirect referencing. And or if you are using a paper file, you can put it within the flaps. So I feel that this structure, format, and checklist are very important, because checklist also tells the outer world, and you now have a QRB for tax audit, right? Earlier we used to get peer review for stat audit. Then we had QRB for stat audit. Now we have a quality review of tax audit also. And so eventually, dire dire, it will come to everybody. And therefore, we need to build the files very well. It not only helps our work, but it also, we are able to demonstrate that the audit work is done in the manner it should be done as per the standard. So, uh, you can have the flaps, have the formats, and have the checklist with the referencing in place on either digital format or in paper format, or a mix of the two. Because I think slowly we are going to move entirely digital, and we will not have any paper file except maybe engagement letters, or sometimes engagement letter now last minute where something is signed. You can apply a DSC and save it. You don't need a printout, right? Your financials are also signed with a DSC often. Say, especially if you are an LLP partnership firm and you buy a 1200 rupees DSC for 2 years, I mean, recommend to clients once it's done, it's filed. Imagine how much time it saves. Printing, sending, stamping, all these kind of things are completely saved, and within minutes it's over from the client end as well as at your end. So we can, make that move, push the client towards that side, that let's go digital. Then let's come to notes to TAR. Any questions about any of this, or any comments, thoughts? Is it too far-fetched? Little bit. So something, no, it's not. Great. So one, for example, if you don't want to do this workflow, one can always do a Google Drive also, meaning it's not a big deal. Once you put a Google Drive, put a lot of these things of workflow up there, then the client can, do that. And of course, it doesn't give you how much is due and all those kind of reports, but it's very much feasible. Uh, then we come to notes to TAR. Now, uh, this is an important thing. Since the paper copy vanished, we are not able to supply some kind of additional information, right? Anybody had filed paper copies before 1314? Okay. So some are from the digital generation, others are from the paper generation. So when we had the paper copy, we could, uh, submit certain other paperwork also. Now, how do we file something on the portal which is not in the format? Because now we are limited by the utility. We can't file anything inside utility, right? There is any attachment? No. So what we found is, and probably some others also, there are 4 places where you can file. What are they? Balance sheet, profit and loss, audit report, cost audit, and some other document. I think these are 4 or 5 slots that are available. The other thing is an open ended thing, right? If you log into the TAR area, into your ARCA login or whatever, you will see there other documents, or it's some other kind of thing. In that, you can probably file the uh, TAR notes or notes to TAR. Now, what could it be? Anything that you want to write to explain your position in the TAR, you can put it as notes to TAR. And some of it is either by operation of some kind of a judgment to that situation, or some of it is about, say, this clause 44, you have done it in a certain way and you are not able to clarify in the utility how you have done it. You can do it here. So let's look at, say, clause 44, because that will be most relevant. So this is all standard kind of a thing. You can modify it to reduce your notes to TAR depending on what is relevant, what is applicable. So breakup of total expenditure, how you have followed, what method you have followed, you can write here in, terms of para 82. This is how you have done it. Depreciation is removed. Schedule 3 has, whatever. So the method that is prescribed in the guidance note and in your situation of the client, you can define it here and that apply it as a notes to TAR and file it along with the TAR, and it will remain on the income tax portal. So in case of any kind of a eventuality later, you have said that I have described this in my notes to TAR. That's the only purpose it will serve. If you aren't doing it, you can start with in some way, right? And a lot of times you will have that as your paperwork. You are keeping it on your file. Now, if you need to upload it, you can upload it as notes to TAR and let the client also sign it. So at the end, you want the client to sign it as well, right? So have the client also sign and you guys also sign. And everything is digital anyways. In the end, they have to sign. So why not obtain that and upload? For example, SSE not liable to GST. So he is not liable to, GST or SSE under composition scheme. These kind of things that you wish to write, any kind of a detailing that will explain your filling up of the TAR, that can be written as notes to TAR and uploaded in that other document. Yes. Then obviously, people are today a challenge, right? Today, the people you have, after next year, they may not be there. Uh, if you're lucky, then after 3 years, they may not be there. So people are a constant challenge, not only in this country, but it's happening globally. It's a real challenge. Add to that, audit is becoming a challenging profession because a lot of chartered accountants who become chartered accountants, they want to do everything but audit. Is that true? So nobody wants, okay, 1 or 2 years max, but then they want to go do some corporate job here, there. So audit is becoming the least preferred from my experience, that after a while they feel कि बस it's too much pressure, quarter to quarter सब चल रहा है, रात दिन एक करना है, you know. So beyond the point, if I find something else, people don't want to do it. So if you have and like madam said that you can have training. Now if in the training, if you did a training which is internal in your office, or sit wherever you can get some space, run them through all of this, probably it doesn't take more than 2 to 3 hours at the most. And you can have things like how to upload the tar. Now uploading tar always has some nuances every year. Sometimes some java utility doesn't work, sometimes there is always one or two things that is new. And if you don't teach them, then at the last minute, so what should be done pre-upload, what should be done for uploading the tar, etc., where you save in your server, what is this JSON file. Now nobody knows JSON file before they join a CA office, right? JSON is some guy's name, right? It's not the name of a file. So now all this has to be trained, because the CA syllabus doesn't teach about JSON file. Even if you got rank 1, only if you have done articleship and you have filed a tax audit report, you will know. Otherwise, JSON is just somebody's name. So how things should be scanned, it doesn't become too heavy. All those kind of things, you can have a 2-page simple things, put it in a step. All this is balance sheet item. Why? Because it will require one-time effort. After that, it will help you scale, it will improve the quality, it will reduce the error, and it will become much easier, hopefully, in the next several years. So I feel that this should be done at some point. If all this is done, then it's much more easier in the years ahead. So this is again part of your sort of firm material. Yes, you can have, a letter of representation, and you can draft it from the this thing. Your guidance note has a format probably, but basically it's telling that, the facts and amounts that are stated are duly authenticated by us. This part is very important. One of the typical client attitude is what? Sir, aap file kar lo. Whatever you say. But if something goes wrong, then what will happen? Aapne file kiya. Some people have seen entries passed. In the entry, they have written that the CA has told me to pass this entry. Aisa, in the narration also they write this. Yes. So it's unimaginable. And sometimes you say, no, you have to, they will sign it. But at the end, when you show this to them, if they have signed it, at least you have some paperwork, because at that time, nobody will remember. Sir, I don't remember. Madam, I don't remember. Except as stated in Form 3CD, all statutory dues or amounts referred under Section 43B were paid on. So whatever you wish to write, I'm not going to go into the spoon feeding bit and writing, but you feel that these 5 or 6 things are absolutely important, critical. You take it as a letter of representation. And in the end, you must always have this, that I or we acknowledge our responsibility for preparing the previously mentioned forms and believe that the said information to be true, complete, and correct in all respects. We understand that We are responsible for compilation and filing of the above forms after having reviewed their content. We, the undersigned, confirm that we are authorized to sign this, and the undersigned confirm that, while e-filing our reports, we authorize you to use our digital signature. Often client digital signature is sent to the CA because it's too complicated. So then they send it to the CA. So make sure you add this, that we authorize you to. I think there was some kind of a report where they said, client DSC is used recently by the CA because you can now track down the location from where the DSC is applied, etc., where the acceptance has also happened. So these three things that they have confirmed the details, they are authorized to sign this. And number three, they authorize you to use the DSC if you are using the DSC. Then there is, elements about the format of the 3CA that is also given in the guidance note, where some of these paragraphs, what is the auditor's responsibility, what is the management's responsibility, all that is already defined. You may want to put it in 3CA in that patch that is available. Then, of course, you can have important notes. For example, clause 44 was one new challenge last year. You have 30C, you have explanations, or, some things about, say, gratuity. What you put in that, 40A9, and what you put in 43B, and it's funded and unfunded. Whatever you have, some kind of an internal note where you have gathered information, because people tend to mix up the two. If they don't understand, then it will go wrong. So this can be your important notes. Then add a GST clause, situations of that clause, how you want that to be filled. And these are TA, QRB, tax audit, QRB, any kind of notes, etc., that come out, get published on WRC-ICI website. Keep it here. Also, there are certain observations which those who audit also, some of these observations that are published are very important. And if you pull out even 50% of that, ideally all of it, and see where you can improve in your methodology, then it will help with the quality of the audit. And yeah, of course, you have this 3CD, 3CA, 3CB as the basic format. So then you have got the full pack ready for the year. So it's like your toolbox. If you were going to fix something, you will carry a toolbox, right? If you're a carpenter, if you are a plumber or whatever. So this pack becomes your toolbox. So we have looked at all of this: notes to TAR, appointment, engagement, fees letter, NOC, I don't have to mention. Now, one more thing is the referencing part, which I have always felt that things are not referenced, where how the flow of numbers from financial to tax audit happen, that referencing doesn't happen. Meaning from here, number is A and their number is A plus something or A minus something. What has changed in between becomes very important. So that kind of a referencing is very crucial. If after 2 years, after 3 years, you want to locate why you did something in the manner you did it, then this referencing becomes very helpful. Otherwise, one has to, look for ye paper ka kya connection hai. This you have already heard. What is not documented is not done. One more thing that I have seen is that gathering data versus doing audit are two different things. A lot of times we get data, but that doesn't prove we have done the audit. Doing the audit is audit work. What have we done with that data? How we have arrived at the conclusion where we have arrived. If it was verification of something, is verification done? If it was some kind of an opinion on something, then that is done. So that audit work is different from gathering of data. Oftentimes these two are not distinguished. So I suggest That is always kept in mind. Uh, and I think handwritten query sheets, don't throw them away. A lot of people, after the audit is over, they just throw it away. That is one great evidence that audit was done, because you have all these handwritten query sheets. Nowadays, since everything is electronic, everything looks very spick and span. But if you kept the handwritten work papers, it is one way to prove that the audit was done. Query sheets, qualification related work papers, referencing opinions, decisions, and e-copy of TAR that is signed, downloaded after filing, etc., are all important. And last but not the least, this guy is asking the auditor that you gave 60 billion toys, but you didn't get one receipt. So our professional skepticism and all kinds of report, especially from PCAOB in the US and now NFRA set up here, talks about lack of adequate professional skepticism. So to keep questioning why something is taken as it is and why we should not ask more questions. So that becomes very important. This we have already covered. True and correct appointment engagement fees letter we have seen. DCMM 2.0, do not forget. And otherwise, it's 2nd September. I hope you all enjoy the ride for next 28 days. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. If there are any questions or if there are any comments that you would want to make or share something, because we have a little bit of time, right? Because I've seen some lawyers come, some other professions come to speak. They say only chartered accountants have this kind of a session where effectively everyone is a competitor of the other, yet everyone is sharing their best practices, their knowledge with others. So in that sense, if you have any good practice that you wish to share with others, that will be great. Or something that has worked, not worked, or any questions, please, sir. Sorry. Oh, engagement letter from me. Sure. Okay. I'll send it to them. But I am not the regulator. I'm using something that, or if you send me a mail, I'll send you what I have. But I would take an engagement letter and a LOR for a tax return also. Let me tell you this. Because tomorrow, if there is anything in the tax return, if there is anything in the tax audit report that the client later on feels that he didn't pay attention and now he wants to, shift the responsibility to you, this is most important things that you must keep. So happy to share. But you must validate for your situation along with the standard. Yes, sir.
Can I sit and ask?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, so there was one situation where there was a firm which had the VAT number, and were displaying it as the specific clause, a VAT registration number, so and so. Then when the GST regime came on, the firm insisted on continuing with the VAT number as advised by the lawyer, since they had a very big VAT refund case. Now, the dispute was that the VAT number was automatically cancelled for people who are already registered in the VAT regime. They didn't have to make any specific, except for give very basic KYC documents. The number was automatically migrated to GST. Now, what happens when we have both the numbers live? You, technically speaking, can't have two numbers live, but the client has insisted on keeping the number alive because the lawyer has insisted the case is going up to the High Court and it's going to go on for some more time. What happens? How do you report this? That there is a VAT number also, and it's not in the petroleum sector or any of the sectors where there are. It's a dual thing. It's in a pure GST sector, not not the alcohol.
Got it. Got
not
it.
where there is a VAT. Also.
VAT also. Yeah.
Then how do you report this? There is VAT also, and there's that GST number also. The small query. It's a non-risk item, but
see, in that clause 1 to 8, you are able to fill in whatever you want, right? If I'm not mistaken, there is no bar on what you can write, how you can write. You just give the name of the law and its registration number. So to my mind, if because you see, it's also client's prerogative to see what should be given. If maybe he has cases going on, he has some other very, like I remember in one case, they wanted a separate, this is before Schedule 3, they wanted, say, scientific expenditure to be shown on the face of the accounts because they are claiming a large scientific, and if it's audited and if it's shown separately, in these early days. So they wanted that. Now, since it was possible, we would give it because it is going to help the client. Then he doesn't, that authority will not question it is under other expenses, which is anyway such a fat amount. So I would feel that no point in writing. And
Do you know upon adding a note to say, just to explain, this was actually cancelled technically,
huh,
but still carried as a valid number.
then you use this in the notes to tar also, that this was cancelled and this is how it is, and this explanation then will go up on the portal.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? See, this is digital competency maturity model, and it's a beautifully done document. And it says that what are these digital competencies CA firms should develop. And this is one document that will take your technology standard of the firm from wherever you are to many steps ahead. You can fill it like a checklist, you print it, it's maybe 30, 40, 50 pages, and you see what you have done and not done. I think it is also on that your e-learning portal. So you can fill out and you can get your own score, if I'm not mistaken. But even if it's not there, you can print it and say, what do I have and where I'm lacking. So you can say that in a couple of years, I'll build this, I'll build that. Because technology is eventually the only thing that will save us. Otherwise, more and more pressure will come our way, and it's very hard to. So I strongly recommend. I think it's a very beautiful document prepared by the, I think WRC or ICI or not sure.
Hello, sir. Which is the software which you have used for cloud-based workflow?
This is called Proof Hub, and I found that who is asking this question? Oh, sir. So it's called Proof Hub, and it is also given in this DCMM. In fact, you can look at several options that are there, and they have given examples also. You can write to them, get some demos, and find whichever works for you. I found that this was very useful, and I put entire office, all work that we do, from inducting an article to everything, onto this. Yes. I thought workflow is very important. You know how every work now has so many different steps, and if you do not do it in a certain systematic way, for example, even say 15 CACB certificate, client will give you half documents. If you just send the link and say you provide this document, then it has all the 8-10 things. Client just has to upload and say whoever else in your office is handling it is also on that part. So he will also see it, the client also sees it, you are also seeing it. Then everyone is on the same page and there is clarity about what is desired. And one can upload it there. Otherwise, there's, one thing missing, two things missing. But if you have asked very clear question that I want these 7 things, it probably helps. Okay, friends. Thank you. I hope you have a great session ahead.